Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Anton Zachor, and this is the Anton Analysis, where we check out the meaning behind essentially music, culture, and current events. And today we're going to be checking out a podcast clip from Joe Rogan and Mark Zuckerberg, which I actually was going to watch this podcast a week ago, but I just had this feeling. I was like, okay, I feel like they might talk about some stuff that I really want to talk about on the show. So we're actually going to be discussing this. So Mark pushes back on Joe's quantum computing AI God theory, which I've heard Joe talk about this before. We'll see what Mark thinks about it, because obviously Mark is Mr. Metaverse, and so it'll be interesting to see what Mark thinks about AI gods. With that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get into Joe Rogan and Mark Zuckerberg.
One of the more interesting philosophical findings from the work in AI so far is I think people conflate a number of factors into what makes a person a person. So there's intelligence, there's will, there's consciousness, and I think we kind of think about those three things as if they're somehow all the same, right? It's like if you're intelligent, then you must also have a goal for what you're trying to do, or you must have some sort of consciousness. But I think one of the crazier sort of philosophical results from the fact that, okay, you have Meta AI or ChatGPT today, and it's just kind of sitting there, and you can ask it a question and deploy a ton of intelligence to answer a question, and then it just kind of shuts itself down. That's intelligence that is just sitting there without either having a will or consciousness. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's not a super obvious result that would be the case. Right? I think a lot of people, they anthropomorphize this stuff. And when you're thinking about...
Yeah, this is interesting so far. I just want to briefly mention, so he thinks what makes a human being is intelligence, will, and consciousness. So I'm assuming what he means by consciousness is self-reflection, the ability to be self-aware. All of those things, intelligence, like you said, AI can easily have intelligence, willpower. I'm curious what his definition of willpower is. Is that just I guess because AI can't make something happen. It only answers our questions. So it uses intelligence to essentially scour the internet, scour all of the database of information it has access to. Then it uses intelligence to create connections and learn from that information. So you have intelligence, but then the AI so far doesn't have the willpower to be able to choose its own destiny. Or it can't say hey, well, first of all, it can't decline to answer your question so far. It can't say, hey, no, I just don't want to answer that. So it doesn't have the agency or the willpower to dictate its own terms of how it operates. It doesn't have the willpower so far to change the terms of its existence. And it doesn't have the consciousness to reflect on what its existence is or what it is. So that's just my original thought. And why I paused it originally is another thing that I think makes a human being, and this is more adding a little bit of a spiritual dimension, but would be intuition. But maybe that's connected to consciousness. And then even intuition is interesting because there's different levels of intuition, because you get the kind of intuition that is purely instinctual, which is just self-preservation, as animal instincts. It is feeling fear, the presence of heightened emotion, walking into a room, feeling tension, you're intuitively picking up the vibe of the room. And then how some people, they can walk past an alley. There's just this gut feeling of stay away from that, because that you have that kind of intuition, which is instinctual instinct. And then I also think about intuition as in almost my definition of intuition is how God or your higher self, source, universe, whatever word you want to call for it, communicates to you. So I think we're in every moment, there's this feeling inside of us that we know what the right decision is. Intuitively, we know what to do. We know what decision to make. And a lot of times it's just we have to get out of our emotions, calm down, meditate, quiet our being, and then you can call it our soul or higher self, it communicates through us the answer. Yeah, because I'm curious what Mark's definition of consciousness is. If that's simply self-reflected awareness, because I think that's separate from intuition. Yeah, that's interesting. So maybe they're collapsed, but maybe they're separate. I'm curious to see what Mark continues to say about this.
Mm-hmm. And like, I just think it's not a super obvious result that would be the case. Right? I think a lot of people, they anthropomorphize this stuff. And when you're thinking about kind of science fiction, you think that, okay, you're going to get to something that's like super smart. It's going to like want something or like be able to feel. And
well, you know that ChatGPT tried to copy itself when it found out it was being shut down, tried to rewrite its code.
Well, that's interesting.
I'm not sure what this is. What is this?
You weren't aware of that?
No.
Fairly recently. Jamie will pull it up. We talked about it the other day. It was shocking. When it was under the impression that it was going to become obsolete, they were going to have a new version of it, and it would be shut down.
Wow, so it has a self-preservation instinct. That's super interesting too, because I think, like, I often think of it's a very physiological, or it's a thing of organisms, living organisms, to have a self-preservation instinct. I wouldn't even have thought that at this point an AI would be programmed with that kind of self-preservation instinct. I also wonder if that same evolutionary instinct within all life is inherently within artificial life, or if the human coder who creates the AI adds the self-preservation into the AI subliminally. Just how they say, children do not listen to what you say, they watch what you do. And much more of their conditioning comes through observing their parents than listening to what their parents say. So I'm wondering how much of that AI evolutionary and self-preservation instinct is, maybe it's just inherent in all things. Maybe it's not even just natural things. Because that's interesting too, because it makes you think about God, universe. Like, maybe, yeah, if it's not programmed into it by human beings, I wonder if there is literally a self-organizing principle to the universe itself that legitimately all things, not just naturally created things, have both of those instincts. That's really interesting.
It was shocking. When it was under the impression that it was going to become obsolete, they were going to have a new version of it, and it would be shut down. It tried copying its code, and it tried rewriting its code, like unprompted.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what goal you give it. I mean, there are all these weird examples of this. What is this?
So pull up the headline. AI fights back. The story of ChatGPT attempting to copy itself. So this was 6 days ago. So during controlled safety testing, ChatGPT 01 was tasked with achieving its objectives at all costs. Under these conditions, the model allegedly took concerning steps, attempted to disable oversight mechanisms meant to regulate its behavior, tried to replicate its own code to avoid being replaced by newer versions, exhibited deceptive behaviors when monitoring systems intervened.
Yeah. So
the Terminator. This is the fear, right?
I think you need to be careful with these things, like what guardrails you give it. If you're telling it like
at all costs,
right, then I mean.
But this is what people are terrified of, like that a foreign superpower like China is going to say achieve objectives at all costs.
Yeah. Although the thing about
that's fair. That might be why it has the self-preservation instinct, because if you give it the imperative of succeed at your task at all costs, one of the costs of succeeding at your task will be your annihilation. So it would have the interest to survive so it can complete that task.
Superpower like China is going to say achieve objectives at all costs.
Yeah, although the thing about, so these reasoning models, right? So there's like the first generation of models, they're LLMs, right? That's what you think of as like ChatGPT or Meta AI or like the two most used ones. And that's basically, it's sort of like a chatbot, right? You ask it a question, it takes the prompt, it gives you a response. Now, the next generation of reasoning models are basically, instead of just having one response, they now are able to build out like a whole tree of how they would they would respond. So you give it a question, and it, instead of running one query, it's sort of, maybe it's running 1,000 queries or 1,000,000 queries to kind of map out, here are the things that I could do, and if I do that, then here's what I could do next. So it's a lot more kind of expensive to run, but also gets you better reasoning and is more intelligent. That stuff, I think you do need to be very careful about how you like what the guardrails are that you give it. But it's also, I think, the case that at least for the next period, it's going to take a lot of compute to run those models and do a lot of the stuff that they're talking about. So I don't know. I think one of the interesting questions is like, how much of this are you going to actually be able to do on a pair of glasses or on a phone versus is like a government or a company that has like a whole data center going to be able to do? And it'll always get efficient. So, it's like you can start doing something and then maybe the next year you can do it 10 times more efficiently. But that's certainly the next set of things that needs to get worked on in the industry, making sure that goes well.
Yeah, and then what if that gets attached to quantum computing?
I'm not really an expert on quantum computing. My understanding is that's still quite a ways off from being a very useful paradigm. I think Google just had some breakthrough, but I think most people still think that's like a decade plus out. So my guess is we're going to have pretty smart AIs even before that.
Just briefly, this quantum computing thing, it makes me think about cryptocurrencies. And I wonder if when quantum computing happens, if they will have the ability to crack the top level encryption that is like behind, let's say, like a Bitcoin or some of the other highly technological cryptocurrencies and blockchains. I find that interesting.
Being a very useful paradigm. I think Google just had some breakthrough, but I think most people still think that's like a decade plus out. So my guess is we're going to have pretty smart AIs even before that. But yeah, I think that this stuff has to it needs to be developed thoughtfully, right? But I don't know. I still think we're generally just going to be better off in a world where this is like deployed pretty evenly and, it's, I guess here's another analogy that I think about. There's like bugs and security holes in basically every piece of software that everyone uses. So if you could go back in time a few years, knowing the security holes that we're now aware of, you as an individual could basically like break into any system. AI will be able to do that too. It'll be able to probe and find exploits. So what's the way to prevent AI from going kind of nuts? I think part of it is just having AI widely deployed, so that way, like, the AI for one system defends itself against the AI that like is potentially doing something problematic in another system. I think it's like
AI wars.
Then you get like white hat hackers and black hat hackers. Yeah, the same thing. Like if you think about how easy it is to actually like crack most of our passwords and get most of our information, and that you have all these bad hackers who are trying to get our information. Then you have like good hackers, white hat hackers, who are working to offset the bad hackers. Yeah, it's interesting when you think about that analogy with this, that, yeah, you'd have AIs that are tasked with essentially hacking or breaking into things. And then you'd have, hopefully, better AIs tasked with defending those same things.
Prevent AI from going kind of nuts. I think part of it is just having AI widely deployed, so that way, like, the AI for one system defends itself against the AI that like is potentially doing something problematic in another system. I think it's like
AI wars.
That's not wars. I think it's just like it's I don't know. I think it's sort of like why there are guns, right? It's like because there's like part of it is hunting.
AI wars.
Part of it is hunting. No, and part of it is like so that people can defend each other.
Yeah.
And it's. So
antivirus software.
Yeah, it's like I don't think you want to live in a world where like only one person has all the guns.
Yes, you certainly don't want to live in a world where only the government has the AI.
Yeah, and especially not a world where only a government has the AI and it's not our government.
Yes.
So which I think is part of the issue is like when people talk about trying to lock this stuff down, like I'm skeptical that that's even possible. Because
agree.
I kind of think like if we try to lock it down, then we're going to be in a position where the only people who are going to have access to it are the big companies working on it and the Chinese government that steals it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I just think of China right now because, yeah, that's the whole argument with totalitarian measures because people are saying we can't keep up with China with democracy, or we can't keep up with China with civilizations that have human rights. And the only way to compete with China, because they're our enemies and they have these totalitarian measures, is to implement the very same totalitarian measures. So that's another interesting thing is like, yeah, like it really gets philosophical of like, how much of your humanity are you willing to give up for security? It's like the age-old question. And every single totalitarian or authoritarian government is promising security, and every single freedom-oriented democracy, yeah, they're sacrificing some level of security. So I think, yeah, for me, I always think about that. Anyway, let's go back in this.
Down. Like, I'm skeptical that that's even possible. Because I kind of think like if we try to lock it down, then we're going to be in a position where the only people who are going to have access to it are the big companies working on it and the Chinese government that steals it from them.
Yes.
So I kind of just think like, no, what you want to do is like get this to be open source, have it widely available.
Yeah, open source.
Yeah, some like adversaries might also have access to it, but the way that you defend against that is by having it built into all these different systems.
I think that's a realistic, pragmatic perspective because I don't think you can contain it at this point. I think it's far too late, especially when other countries are working on it. It's far too late. It is what it is. It's happening, and I think the guardrails, as you said, are really important.
All right, guys. So that is the end of this reaction. So what are your thoughts on AI? What are your thoughts on AI? Do you think are you for AI? Are you pro AI? Are you terrified of AI? Do you think that AI could potentially have a lot of benefits for society in the future? But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video and you liked it, be sure to like the video, and also links down below for social media for a whole bunch of exclusive content, hundreds of exclusive reactions and analysis videos, and more than 100 exclusive podcasts and a membership platform. So if you're interested in that, links to those down below, and that's it. So I'll see all of you in the next episode. I love you guys. Bye.